I remember looking at the window and the lady said, "Squish them down on your ears. Tighten them on your ears. Tighten the headphones on your ears." I thought, okay, there was no ringing. Then she stood up and she came into my room again and she said, "Remember, when you hear the beep, you have to raise your hand, okay?" And I was puzzled by that because I didn't forget what to do. I just didn't hear a beep. So that's why I didn't raise my hand. I followed her directions. So then I went ahead and raised my hand again. Or she told me, "Don't forget, raise your hand when you hear the beep." She gestured to me to tighten the headphones on my ears, and I did, but I wasn't hearing anything. Finally, I see her through the window mouthing, "Raise your hand when I tell you." So I smushed the headphones on my ears. She raised her hand, so I raised my hand. And then she wrote on a paper, called me over to her. She gave me the paper and sent me back to class. I looked at the paper, puzzled. I was 9 years old at the time, and I didn't fully understand what just happened. I tried to follow the description, but at the same time I felt conflicted. She told me to raise my hand when I heard ringing after I put the headphones on, and if I didn't hear anything, not to raise my hand, but then she chastised me for not raising my hand when I didn't hear anything. So I was confused, I was perplexed. I don't remember much about what happened after this event. I don't remember sharing this information with anyone. It seemed that something happened well after that where maybe my babysitter told my mom. I don't recall. But that was in the 3rd grade. I didn't make a slide about this, but I should have. I wanted to add, before I continue on with the presentation, that somehow I was always drawn to ASL. I learned very young, more signing in English, or signed English, I should say. I had deaf friends, I had some coda friends. How? I don't know. But I learned ASL over many years. And my elementary school had 2 other deaf students at the same time that I was there. One of them is now in grad school, well, formerly a grad student at Gallaudet, and now one of them is at the University of New Mexico. We didn't know each other back then. And my sister didn't sign at the time either. She was oral. With that being said, I wish that I was able to document all of this when I was a kid, when I learned such and such sign, right? But I don't have any information pertaining to that. But somehow I grew up and I was exposed to ASL. After high school, I started signing more ASL. I got involved in the deaf community at our local college. I started signing more ASL as opposed to signed English. Now, today, I have my 3rd grade story, and I'm a full-blown adult now, and I somehow learned ASL. Fast forward to 2008. I was about to start the grad program very soon at Gallaudet University. And maybe this is ironic, maybe not, but I applied as a hearing student. That year, I remember being sick and I had a horrible ear infection. And I couldn't fly because I know that if you fly with an ear infection, the eardrum can burst. So I did not want to experience that. At the last minute, my father decided to drive from Albuquerque, New Mexico to DC. And I remember the whole time I had a really bad ear infection. And it was less painful as it would have been if I had flown. When I got to DC, it started to fade, but I continued to have problems where I would suddenly experience pain in my right ear. And I remember experiencing that pain when I flew on a plane. It felt as though my ears were popping. Or sometimes if I was going up an elevator in a tall building, I would feel pain. And sometimes the pain was sharp and constant. Sometimes it would last 20 or 30 seconds and then go away immediately. It didn't really happen when I flew. I just remember one time it happened at the Gallaudet cafeteria. I was eating and chatting with friends, and then all of a sudden my ears started hurting. It was horrible. I had a new friend who was an audiologist student, and they were practicing on their new tech for 2 weeks as an audiologist student. They were really excited about it. I can't remember how long it was. Maybe it was 2 weeks that they were practicing. And they invited me to the clinic. And she said, "Hey, I have a key. Do you mind coming with me and we can do some tests inside the clinic?" I said, "Oh, yeah, sure. Why not?" So we go together. And then she suddenly says, "You should see an actual audiologist." I said, "Okay, if it's hurting, yeah." So, yeah, you're right. My ears were hurting. I should, right? So, in 2 weeks, I plan to see a real audiologist. So, we were in agreement on that. And I don't know if this still applies today, but I know that any student is welcome to go to the clinic. So you just have to book an appointment. And so I did at that time. So I went and I saw an audiologist and they ran some tests. And I think my friend was still there at the time. The audiologist was taking notes. And I looked at the screening and it said hard of hearing. I remember looking back to third grade at this time thinking, what happened between third grade with the instructor telling me to push on my headphones and raise my hand compared to now where I have a screening that's saying I'm hard of hearing? Another memory started coming up, and then more memories started coming up for me. One where I was in high school running track, specifically cross country, and I don't remember what specific time, but I remember a teammate told me that they loved running with me. And they said that my asthma pump makes sounds, or it taps when I'm running. It makes a clicking sound or something like that. And they said the sound was soothing and comfortable and grounding, and it helped them to focus on running when they heard that. I thought, I mean, I do remember doing that, but I had never realized that it made sounds or noise. Another story of hearing things where I didn't realize that these things made sound. So immediately my world flipped for me at Gallaudet, at a university for the deaf. But I applied as a hearing student. Even though I knew about the thing that happened to me in third grade and, how I was marked as passing the hearing test, I got the paper to prove it. So I felt myself at odds being diagnosed as hard of hearing. I felt like an imposter. So at this point, I'm confused, I'm unsure of myself, and I didn't really have the word yet to describe how I felt. I didn't really have that vocabulary yet, imposter syndrome, so I didn't really know what I felt at that time. But fortunately, being at Gallaudet, you have full access to this visual language, and so it wasn't a problem for me. I proceeded with my studies. And this is my cohort from linguistics. This is our professors. I graduated in 2010. Again, this was a 2-year period where I felt unsure about my background and going to a deaf school and seeming that I had became deaf while I was here. It seemed too coincidental to become deaf later in life. I know that's false, but at the same time, I had grown up with people who went to deaf schools, and I remember asking my deaf friends, "Did you go to a deaf school? Were you mainstream? Were your parents deaf?" And I didn't have that experience like my friends did. I didn't experience that while I was growing up. So in my perspective, I thought I can't be deaf. I can't be hard of hearing because my experience doesn't match my friends' experiences.